Today's classic interview, we are going back to my interview in 2014 with George Lakoff. George Lakoff is sort of the master of political framing. And I want to think about whether what he says about how Republicans have historically been more successful at winning the framing game than Democrats in the context of the 2016 election. George Lakoff, super smart, and has really broken down the ways in which Republican language has been more effective at controlling and framing the debate than Democratic language. I really look forward to checking out this classic interview and sort of thinking about it in terms of Trump and Clinton. Let's take a look. It's great to be joined today by George Lakoff, who is professor of cognitive sciences and linguistics at the University of California, Berkeley, and author of the AllNew, Don't Think of an Elephant, Know Your Values, and Frame the Debate. You know, it's so great to have you on. Your original book is such a great resource in terms of framing and messaging and how important language is for progressives, and also, to be perfectly honest, in pointing out some of the failures of progressive messaging. What have you added or changed in this new edition of the book?
Oh, about 80%. I learned a lot in the last 10 years. I've seen a lot of not very good messaging coming out of the Democratic Party. I've seen better than it was before, which is good. I've seen a lot of mistakes being made by our administration. I've seen progressives not understanding what they need to be doing. I've seen a lot of things happening, and I wrote about them. The idea was to bring everything up to date, and of course the issues are different. So it's about, I would say, it's 80% new work and everything else is rewritten and brought up to date.
So some of the great examples that you had in the original version that still stand out in my mind include your discussion about taxes and how really progressives have not done a good job of showing how taxes really are an investment. Taxes are patriotic. Those who are not paying taxes, in a sense, are essentially free riders. They're getting the stuff for free. They're the welfare recipients, so to speak, that the Republicans often criticize. Do you still think that progressives are doing a poor job on the issue of taxation?
A terrible job. And there's a general point that became clear after a while. Conservatives and progressives have totally different views of what democracy means. For a progressive, democracy is about citizens caring about each other and working through their government to provide public resources for everybody. And that means everybody. You want to start a business, you have sewers, you have roads, bridges, you have an internet, you have satellite communication, you have water, you have electricity. You have all these things that are provided by public resources. You have educated people, you have public health, you're not saddled with disease, etc. You can then go and do your business. But all those things are taken for granted and not noticed. And they're crucial because that is what public resources are about. You can't have a business, work in a business, or do anything at all without public resources. And the same is true for private life. That is, in private life, you need health. You need to be able to be sure you have safe food, safe drinking water, clean air. You need to be able to know that there aren't diseases spreading around you. You needed to have public safety. There are all these things that are public resources provided for you all the time. You want to take a drive, you need to have roads. I mean, this is crucial. We take those things for granted. It's like they're in the background. They're just there. But they're not just there. What taxes are about, and I think the word tax is not a very good word. These are public resources. The crucial idea is that the private depends on the public, whether it's private enterprise or private life. In all cases, the private depends on the public. And without the public, you don't have any of those things. And that takes some money. It means, that you get, no matter how much you earn, you're getting a lot from other people, from your other fellow citizens. No matter how much you're paying in taxes, you couldn't afford it to do all the things that all the other citizens are doing with you and for you.
Well, I'm curious along these lines whether you would agree that the Democratic messaging around the Affordable Care Act has been an absolute disaster, particularly when you take into consideration that when polled fairly, right, not with loaded questions or leading polls, people for the most part are way more progressive than what the Affordable Care Act even provides. Yet, it has seemed to be still one of the most controversial and dividing issues amongst Americans, this issue of the Affordable Care Act. Has it been a progressive framing and messaging mistake, or is there something else we can link to why people just don't seem to agree with the Affordable Care Act in theory, while they very much agree with what it does?
It's a messaging disaster. Before the president came into office after he was elected, he had a poll done on what provisions people would most want in the Affordable Care Act, and
Right.
they're all the provisions, no preconditions, no caps. Your college-age kid can be on your health insurance, and so on and so on. Lots of provisions. They were all 60 or 80% approved of, and they still are. So people like those provisions, and however, and one of the interesting things is that conservatives never attack the provisions. You've never heard a conservative say there should be preconditions. Pregnant women shouldn't be allowed to get insurance, or if you have cancer, you shouldn't be allowed to get insurance. Nobody says that. Never attacked. What they did do was they understood that issues about the details of healthcare are in one part of the brain, and issues of morality are in another. And they went moral. And they went moral on two principles, freedom and life. So they started attacking. They said, this is a government takeover, and there are death panels. Government takeover, death panels, government takeover, death panels, over and over and over. And then they called it Obamacare, as if it weren't about the Affordable Care Act, as if it weren't about affordable care. They said this is really about Obama, government takeover, death panels, right? And they repeated it and repeated it. And the Obama administration didn't come back and say, look, yes, this is about freedom and life. You have cancer, you don't have health insurance, you're not free. You even break your leg, you don't have health insurance, you can't get it set, you can't walk, you're not free. It's about freedom. Health is always about freedom. And life, you could die. You have cancer, you don't have health insurance, you're going to die. This is about freedom and life, the most principled things you can imagine. They could have come back and completely undercut the conservative argument, and they didn't.
Why do you think they didn't?
Because they don't understand how framing works. And they don't understand it for a deep reason. They went to college. Now, I'm not being cynical about this. If you are a conservative and you go to college, you're very likely to take some business courses. And in the curriculum, you'll take marketing. And marketing professors study my field, cognitive science. And what that means is they understand that people think in terms of framing, metaphors, images, emotions, and narratives. That's how thought works. And conservatives are very good at marketing their ideas on that basis. They understand that that is in fact rationality. That is what real rationality is about. But if you go to college and you're a Democrat, you want to go into politics, you're going to study political science, you're going to study public policy, economics, law, fields like that. And they work on what is called Enlightenment reason from the year 1650. And that says all thought is conscious, when in fact it's 98% unconscious. It says thought is just logical, it works by logic, and what its reason, rationality is what makes us human, so we have all of the same reason. So if you just tell people the facts, they should reason to the right conclusion. Utterly false. People think in terms of, first, what is most deeply important to them personally, and among that, their moral system and what they consider right. Secondly, they're thinking in terms of frames, because that's how everyone thinks. Everyone thinks in terms of frames. And in politics, all framing is moral. That is, if you are a politician and you come up and you say, look, Here's what I think you should do. Here's the right policy. We need an Affordable Care Act, blah, blah, blah. Okay? The assumption is it's because it's right, not because it's wrong. No politician comes out and says, do what I do because it's wrong or it doesn't matter. The assumption is that it's right, and the difference in policy has to do with difference in moral systems. And we have a moral system, which I just mentioned, for progressives. It is people care about each other. It's about empathy. It's about doing things together for a community, for other people, as well as for yourself. That is a crucial part of progressive morality, and it's crucial to American democracy. That's why we have public resources. Now, the Democrats get up there, and what they do is they just recite the list of 24 policies that go into this. At one point, the Democrats, sent out a message on their website to 13 million people. It said, talk to all your friends and neighbors about what is wonderful about the Affordable Care Act. And here are the 24 things. But just to make it easier for you, we put them in 3 groups of 8. Nobody's going to remember 3 groups of 8. Any cognitive scientist will tell you nobody's going to remember 3 groups of 8. I've never met anyone who heard that and did remember the 3 groups of 8. The point is that they don't think that way. They think in terms of enlightenment reason, just give them the facts and give them a long list. That's not how people think.
So no question that, as you've said before, the progressive mindset on framing and messaging is not linking up with the progressive morality, so to speak.
Exactly. That morality is unconscious and automatic. Not unconscious in the sense that it isn't used. It is used so much all the time, it doesn't have to be mentioned. It's not anything anybody pays attention to because it's part of who you are. People don't understand that is what's crucial about everything, and it's about freedom. That is, all those public resources give you freedom. They give you the freedom to start a business, to work in a business, the freedom to live a decent life, the freedom to be healthy, the freedom to be educated. Those are freedoms. And freedom is very important for a lot of reasons. Just about every progressive issue comes down in large measure, not always in everything, but in large measure to be a freedom issue. Take what is the right wing talks about the abortion issue. You don't talk about the abortion issue. This is about a woman's freedom to control her own body. But it's not just a woman's freedom. It's everyone's freedom to control their own bodies.
Absolutely. No question about it. And we are, of course, speaking with Professor George Lakoff. The book is Don't Think of an Elephant, Know Your Values and Frame the Debate, the all-new version of the book with 80% new material. Really a pleasure having you on. Thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you, David.